You know, Evelyn, this house is far too big for one person. My son, Daniel, swirled a glass of expensive red wine as though he were offering wise financial advice instead of criticism. His wife, Vanessa, sat beside him with a polite smile, nodding as if they had rehearsed every word before arriving. I stood at the dining table holding a platter of roasted vegetables. For a brief moment, I simply looked at them. I was 66 years old. My husband had passed away 5 years earlier, leaving behind the beautiful 4-bedroom home we had built together. Every room held memories: birthday parties, Christmas mornings, family dinners, and countless ordinary days that had quietly become precious. Daniel and Vanessa had invited themselves over for Sunday dinner. As always, I had cooked every dish while they arrived empty-handed. Vanessa gently laid down her fork. "Daniel has a point," she said. "The property taxes alone must be expensive. Then there are your vacations, gardening club, spa weekends. You're enjoying retirement, but maybe it's time to be more practical." I placed the serving dish on the table. "Practical?" I asked calmly. Daniel leaned forward. "You could sell this place, buy a nice little condo and save a fortune. Honestly, it would help everyone. The boys are getting older, their activities cost a fortune, and Vanessa's online business still needs investment. Instead of spending money on yourself, you could help your family." I looked from my son to my daughter-in-law. Daniel wore the designer sweater I had bought him for Christmas. Outside, his luxury SUV sat in my driveway, a vehicle I knew stretched his budget to the limit. Vanessa's manicured fingers rested beside a designer handbag that cost more than my first monthly mortgage payment decades ago. Neither of them seemed embarrassed. Instead, they studied me as though I were a financial report that needed correcting. They weren't asking for help. They were deciding how my savings should be spent. I could have reminded them of the countless times I'd rescued them financially, the emergency repairs, the birthday gifts, the vacations I'd secretly helped pay for, the monthly bills they never realized I was quietly covering. Instead, I smiled. "You may be right," I said softly. "Perhaps it's time I take a careful look at my finances." Their faces brightened instantly. Vanessa exchanged a quick glance with Daniel, certain they had convinced me. Neither of them realized I meant something entirely different. After they left that evening, they also left behind dirty dishes scattered across my kitchen. Normally, I would have cleaned everything before sitting down. Instead, I walked straight into my home office. I opened my laptop, logged into my online banking, and retrieved every monthly statement from the past year. A blank notebook lay beside my keyboard. Across the top of the first page, I wrote, "Monthly expenses I pay for Daniel's family." The first entry surprised even me: premium auto insurance. Years ago, Daniel had suggested combining policies to save money. Somehow, I had ended up paying the entire premium. Next came their family cell phone plan, then high-speed internet, streaming subscriptions, cloud storage, the software subscription for Vanessa's struggling online boutique, private soccer coaching for both grandsons, meal delivery services, electronic toll passes, premium music subscriptions, a roadside assistance membership, even a magazine subscription Vanessa had forgotten she owned. One after another, the list continued growing. When I finally stopped counting, there were 24 separate monthly payments flowing from my retirement income into their household. For years, I had convinced myself I was simply helping my family. Now I realized something much different. I wasn't helping. I was financing a lifestyle they couldn't afford. Oddly enough, I didn't feel angry. I felt clear. The guilt I'd carried as a mother quietly disappeared. Daniel had told me to reduce unnecessary spending. For once, I intended to follow his advice. Methodically, I opened each account. Remove payment method, confirm. Next account, delete card, confirm, again and again. One by one, every automatic payment vanished. I removed my checking account from Daniel's digital wallet. I canceled every recurring charge connected to my finances. 45 minutes later, my work was finished. The burden I had carried for years had disappeared with a series of quiet clicks. I closed my laptop. Only then did I return to the kitchen. As I washed the dishes, I noticed something unexpected. The house felt peaceful, lighter. Tomorrow marked the first day of the month. Their bills would soon begin arriving. I poured myself a cup of tea before bed and stood beside the living room window. Outside, the garden my husband and I had planted decades earlier swayed gently beneath the evening breeze. For the first time in years, I wasn't wondering how I could solve someone else's financial problems. I was thinking about my own future, and strangely enough, it finally belonged to me. The next morning began more peacefully than any Monday I could remember. I woke before sunrise, brewed a pot of dark coffee, and carried my favorite mug onto the back patio. The air smelled of freshly cut grass, and the flower beds glowed beneath the first rays of morning light. A pair of robins hopped across the lawn, while a gentle breeze rustled the maple tree my late husband had planted 20 years earlier. For the first time in years, my bank account wasn't silently supporting another household. At exactly 7:42 a.m., my phone buzzed. Daniel. I smiled faintly before answering. "Good morning." His greeting was rushed. "Mom, did your bank issue you a new debit card?" "No," I replied. "Why?" "My payment got declined at the coffee shop. My digital wallet says the card was removed. Can you read me the card number so I can add it again?" There's a line behind me. I took another slow sip of coffee. "I can't do that." Silence. "What do you mean you can't?" "You gave me some excellent advice yesterday," I said evenly. "You suggested I reduce unnecessary expenses. I spent last night reviewing my finances, and I realized I was paying for far too many things that weren't mine." He laughed nervously. "Come on, Mom, it's just $6. "No, Daniel." "What?" "I removed my card from your account. From now on, you'll be paying for your own coffee." His voice hardened. "Seriously?" "Yes." "This is ridiculous." "I don't think so." He sighed loudly. "Fine, I'll use another card. We'll talk later." The call ended. I placed my phone beside my coffee and watched the sunrise. Daniel believed this was about a cup of coffee. He hadn't checked his email yet. He hadn't noticed the insurance notices, or the streaming subscriptions, or the internet service, or the software invoices. The coffee was merely the first pebble. The avalanche had yet to arrive. Around 2 o'clock that afternoon, my phone rang again. This time it was Vanessa. The moment I answered, her voice exploded through the speaker. "What is going on?" "Hello, Vanessa. My business software locked me out. Daniel just got a cancellation notice from the insurance company, and our internet provider says our payment failed. Did you do something?" "Yes." "You actually canceled everything." "I removed my payment information from every account connected to my finances." "All of them?" "Yes." She sounded completely stunned. "The boys' soccer payment is due today." "I know." "Our internet gets disconnected tonight." "I know." "You can't just do this without warning us." I gently rested my gardening gloves on the patio table. "I believe I did warn you." "What?" "Yesterday, both of you explained that I was spending too much money. After thinking about it, I realized financing your household wasn't part of a sensible retirement plan. We meant you should sell your house. And I decided there was a much better place to begin saving. You're ruining us." "No," I replied calmly. "I'm simply no longer paying your bills. You need to fix this immediately." "I won't. Daniel is coming over." "I understand." She hung up before I could say goodbye. Less than an hour later, Daniel's SUV screeched into my driveway. The front door burst open without a knock. He still carried the spare key I had given him years ago for emergencies. Apparently, everything qualified as an emergency. He stormed into the living room with Vanessa close behind. "What is wrong with you?" Daniel demanded. I calmly marked my place in my novel. "Good afternoon. My insurance was canceled. You'll need to contact the company. They want hundreds of dollars to reinstate it." "I imagine they do." Vanessa crossed her arms. "You know we don't have that kind of money sitting around." I looked directly at her. Then perhaps the luxury SUV wasn't the best financial decision. Daniel rubbed both hands across his face. "Mom, maybe yesterday got out of hand. Maybe. So, just give me your Visa card. I'll reconnect everything online." He stretched out his hand. For years, I would have reached into my purse without hesitation. Instead, I quietly shook my head. "No." His hand remained frozen in midair. "What?" "I've retired from financing your life." "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious." The room became perfectly still. Then I extended my own hand. "In return, I'd like something from you." "What?" "My house key." His expression instantly changed. No. Then I'll have the locks changed. You're acting crazy. No, Daniel, I stood. For the first time in years, I'm acting responsibly. Neither of them spoke. After several tense seconds, they turned and marched toward the front door. The slam echoed throughout the house. I waited until their SUV disappeared down the street. Then I picked up my phone. "Good afternoon," a cheerful voice answered. "Hello," I said. "I'd like to schedule a locksmith today. I need every exterior lock replaced." As I ended the call, I glanced around the quiet house. For years, I had unlocked every door for everyone else. Today, I was finally locking them for myself. The locksmith arrived less than an hour later. His white service van rolled into my driveway just as I finished watering the roses along the front walkway. He greeted me with a warm smile and immediately began replacing every exterior lock on the house. As I watched him work, I felt an unexpected sense of relief. For years, Daniel had treated my home as if it belonged to him. He would stop by without calling, walk inside with his spare key, and help himself to whatever he needed. Sometimes it was food, sometimes it was tools from the garage. Occasionally, he and Vanessa would even drop off boxes without asking, assuming I would never object. I had mistaken a lack of boundaries for generosity. Not anymore. Within 40 minutes, the front door, back door, garage entrance, and side gate all had brand new locks. I thanked the locksmith, tucked the fresh keys into my purse, and reset the garage keypad to a new security code only I knew. The house finally felt like mine again. There was one last task. I walked downstairs to the basement. The space had slowly transformed over the years from my storage area into Vanessa's unofficial warehouse. Plastic bins lined one entire wall. Some held unsold boutique inventory. Others contained old decorations, worn-out toys, seasonal clothing, and household items Vanessa insisted she would need someday. She hadn't opened most of the boxes in years, yet they occupied nearly half my basement. I sighed. One by one, I carried every container upstairs. It wasn't easy. My knees complained with every trip, but my determination carried me forward. After nearly an hour, 8 large storage bins sat neatly beside the driveway. I covered them carefully with a heavy waterproof tarp and secured the corners with bricks to keep everything dry. Nothing was damaged. Nothing was thrown away. I simply returned their belongings. As I stepped back to admire the cleared basement, I smiled. The room suddenly looked twice as large. So did my future. Late that afternoon, my phone buzzed with a banking notification. Payment declined. Daniel had attempted to use my old card to pay their internet bill. It failed. A few minutes later, another notification appeared. Another declined payment. Then another. Apparently, he still believed persistence might somehow restore my generosity. Instead, every attempt reminded him that things had changed. At 6 o'clock, a silver sedan pulled into my driveway. Vanessa climbed out wearing oversized sunglasses despite the cloudy evening. Rather than knocking on the front door, she marched directly toward the garage keypad. She entered the old code. Error. She frowned and tried again. Error. With growing frustration, she dug through her purse, pulled out Daniel's spare house key, and hurried toward the front porch. The key slid into the lock. It refused to turn. She twisted harder. Nothing. Finally, she pounded her fist against the door. "Evelyn!" I was comfortably seated in my living room, watching everything through the security camera connected to my tablet. Pressing the intercom button, I answered. "Hello, Vanessa." She looked around in surprise. "You changed the locks?" "Yes." "Open the door." "No. My formal dresses are downstairs. We have a charity gala tomorrow." "They aren't downstairs anymore." "What?" "Look beside the driveway." She turned. Her eyes landed on the neatly stacked containers beneath the blue tarp. Her mouth fell open. "You put my things outside?" "I packed everything carefully." "You had no right." "They're your belongings," I replied. "They belong with you." Her face flushed bright red. "You're unbelievable. I've simply reclaimed my storage space." "You're punishing us." "No. I've stopped allowing myself to be taken advantage of." She stormed toward the boxes, dragging them across the driveway one at a time and loading them into her trunk. Before closing the final container, she turned back toward the camera. "If this is how you want things," she shouted, "don't expect to see your grandsons anymore." The words landed harder than anything else she had said. For a brief moment, my heart ached. Then I remembered something important. My grandsons were no longer little boys. They had their own phones, their own bicycles, their own opinions. Vanessa no longer controlled every conversation. After she drove away, I opened my phone and sent a simple message to 16-year-old Owen. "Hi, sweetheart. I know things feel tense right now. Just remember that I love you and your brother very much. Sunday pancakes are still on if you'd like to come by." I set the phone down. Less than 2 minutes later, it chimed. "Hey, Grandma. Mom and Dad are stressed about money again. Noah and I still want pancakes. Can you make the blueberry ones?" A warm smile spread across my face. Some relationships didn't depend on money. They depended on love. That evening, Daniel called again. This time, his voice sounded completely different. There was no anger, only exhaustion. "Mom, our internet was disconnected." I heard. "I can't work from home tomorrow." "I understand. Vanessa's website is suspended." "I see." He hesitated. Then he quietly admitted something I had never expected to hear. "I only have $43 left until payday. Years ago, I would have transferred money before he even finished speaking. This time, I remained calm. "That sounds difficult." "It is. Can we meet tomorrow?" "Yes." "Just the two of us?" I paused. "I'll meet you." "Thank you." "The Maple Street Diner," I said, "tomorrow at noon." "I'll be there." After ending the call, I looked around my peaceful home. For years, solving Daniel's financial problems had become my full-time job. Tomorrow, for the first time, he would have to face the truth instead of another rescue, and I intended to help him in the only way that still mattered, by refusing to save him. I arrived at the Maple Street Diner 10 minutes early. The familiar little restaurant had been part of our town for decades. My husband and I used to stop there every Saturday morning after grocery shopping. Walking through its doors brought back memories of simpler days. Days when Daniel was a little boy who believed I could fix anything. I ordered a cup of black coffee and waited. At exactly noon, Daniel walked through the entrance. Vanessa followed a step behind him. I had asked to meet only my son, but I wasn't surprised she had come anyway. Neither of them looked as polished as they usually did. Daniel's shirt was wrinkled, dark circles rested beneath his eyes, and the confidence he normally carried had disappeared. Vanessa's expression was tense, and she barely acknowledged me before sliding into the booth across from me. No one ordered lunch. Daniel folded his hands on the table. "Mom, things have gotten worse." I quietly nodded. "Our internet is still disconnected. I had to explain everything to my boss. Vanessa's business website is offline and we're behind on several bills." Vanessa leaned forward. "We've been talking and we think we can work something out." I remained silent. "If you could just help us for 6 more months, Daniel continued, "we'll get everything back on track. After that, we'll handle things ourselves." Vanessa quickly added, "We'll stop bringing up your house. You can keep living there as long as you want." For a moment, I simply stared at her. She was offering me permission to remain in my own home. The irony would have been amusing if it hadn't been so sad. Without saying a word, I reached into my purse and removed a neatly folded sheet of paper. I placed it in front of Daniel. He looked down. "What is this?" "A summary." He unfolded it. The page contained every payment I had made on their behalf during the past 5 years. Car insurance, cell phone plans, internet service, streaming subscriptions, cloud storage, software fees, meal deliveries, sports registrations, electronic tolls, roadside assistance. Countless expenses they had gradually forgotten were never theirs to begin with. At the bottom of the page sat one final figure. Total financial support, $43,860. Daniel stared at the number without speaking. Vanessa leaned closer, her eyes widened. That can't be right." "It is. We never asked for that much." "No," I replied gently. "You simply accepted it." Silence settled over the table. Finally, Daniel whispered, "I honestly didn't realize." "I know. You should have told us." "I shouldn't have needed to." He lowered his eyes. For the first time in years, I saw genuine embarrassment instead of entitlement. "I thought I was helping you through temporary difficulties," I said softly. but temporary became permanent. You paid for things we should have been paying ourselves. Yes, I never even noticed. That's the problem. Vanessa suddenly crossed her arms. So you're just going to abandon your own family? I looked directly at her. No, I'm refusing to enable unhealthy habits. She frowned. That's just another way of saying you're leaving us to struggle. I believe struggle teaches lessons comfort often cannot. She scoffed. So this is about proving a point? No, it's about finally respecting myself. Daniel rubbed his forehead. We've been living paycheck to paycheck. You've been living beyond your paycheck. Neither of them argued, because they knew it was true. I folded my hands together. I love you, Daniel. He slowly looked up. You'll always be my son. I know. But loving someone doesn't mean protecting them from every consequence. He nodded quietly. I understand. I raised you to become an independent man. You did. Somewhere along the way, I accidentally became responsible for supporting another household. His shoulders dropped. I'm sorry. Those two words were barely above a whisper. They weren't dramatic. They weren't perfect. But they were honest. I smiled gently. Thank you. Vanessa looked away without saying anything. I stood and placed $5 beside my empty coffee cup. I'm not angry. Daniel rose as well. I know. I'm simply finished paying bills that aren't mine. He slowly folded the spreadsheet and slipped it into his jacket pocket. I think I needed to see that number. I think you did. As I walked toward the door, Daniel called after me. Mom? I turned. I really do love you. A warm smile crossed my face. I've never doubted that. Then I stepped outside into the afternoon sunshine. For years, I believed love meant solving every problem. That afternoon, I finally understood something different. Sometimes, the greatest act of love isn't writing another check. Sometimes, it's allowing someone to stand on their own feet, even when they stumble. As I drove home, I felt lighter than I had in years. The difficult part was finally behind us. What happened next would depend entirely on the choices Daniel and Vanessa made for themselves. 6 months passed. At first, the silence between us felt uncomfortable. Daniel rarely called, and when he did, our conversations were brief and polite. Vanessa never reached out at all. There were no requests for money, no unexpected visits, and no subtle hints about expenses that needed temporary help. Slowly, life settled into a peaceful rhythm. One afternoon, while shopping at the local grocery store, I unexpectedly ran into an old neighbor. I saw Daniel last week, she said. He's driving a different car now. I smiled. I heard. The luxury SUV was gone. In its place was a reliable 10-year-old sedan that cost a fraction of the monthly payments. Not long afterward, another friend mentioned seeing Vanessa working at a real estate office. Apparently, her online boutique had finally closed after years of losing money. Instead of chasing an unrealistic dream, she had accepted a steady job with a regular paycheck. For the first time in years, they were living within their actual income. It wasn't glamorous, but it was sustainable, and that made all the difference. Although my relationship with Daniel remained cautious, something unexpected happened with my grandsons. Every Sunday morning, Owen and Noah arrived on their bicycles just before 9 o'clock. They never forgot to ring the doorbell, even though I always reminded them they were welcome to come straight inside. "Morning, Grandma." Their cheerful voices quickly filled the quiet house. Together we mixed pancake batter, laughed over old family stories, played card games, and spent afternoons working in the garden. Without constant interference, our relationship grew stronger than ever. As they became older, they asked thoughtful questions about life, work, responsibility, and their grandfather. I answered every question honestly. Not once did I criticize their parents. Children learn more from kindness than from bitterness. My own life changed in ways I hadn't expected. Removing 24 unnecessary monthly payments left far more money in my retirement account than I had realized. Instead of financing someone else's lifestyle, I finally invested in my own happiness. I hired a landscaper to handle the heavier gardening work that had become difficult on my knees. I joined a local travel club for retirees and made several wonderful new friends. By spring, I booked the Mediterranean cruise my husband and I had always dreamed of taking together. Standing on the deck of the ship, watching the sunset melt into the sea, I whispered a quiet thank you to him. Without realizing it, he had left me something more valuable than money. He had left me the freedom to choose how I wanted to live. One Saturday afternoon, several months after our meeting at the diner, my doorbell rang. When I opened the door, Daniel stood alone. He looked healthier than he had in years. There was no expensive sweater, no luxury watch, no forced confidence, just my son. He held a small paper bag from my favorite bakery. "I wasn't sure if you'd be home," he said. "I am." He handed me the bag. "I remembered you like cinnamon rolls." "I do." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he took a deep breath. "I've wanted to say something for a long time." I quietly waited. "You were right." I said nothing. "I spent years believing you would always rescue us. Every time we made poor financial decisions, I assumed you'd somehow make everything okay." His voice cracked slightly. I stopped acting like an adult. I gently squeezed his hand. "You've changed." "I had to." He smiled faintly. "We paid off our credit cards." "That's wonderful." "We're building an emergency fund now." "I'm proud of you." "I should have been doing this years ago." "Sometimes people learn when they're ready." He looked toward the garden. "I used to think you were being selfish." "And now?" "Now I realize you were teaching me the lesson Dad probably would have taught me if he were still here." Tears filled my eyes. "I think he would be proud of you." Daniel nodded slowly. "I hope so." Then for the first time in many years, he hugged me without asking for anything. No money, no favors, no expectations. Just a son embracing his mother. It was worth more than every dollar I had ever spent. That evening, I carried a glass of red wine onto the back patio. The garden was peaceful. The house felt warm. Every room belonged to me, just as my husband and I had intended. No one held a spare key. No one stored forgotten boxes in my basement. No one quietly relied on my retirement to support a lifestyle they couldn't afford. Most importantly, I no longer carried the weight of believing that love required endless sacrifice. Real love encourages responsibility. Real love respects boundaries. Real love helps people become stronger, not dependent. As the sun disappeared below the horizon, I raised my glass toward the fading light. Sometimes the most powerful decision isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it begins with a quiet review of your finances, a firm no, and the courage to protect the life you've worked so hard to build. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give the people you love is the chance to stand on their own. The future no longer belonged to the past. It finally belonged to all of us.